The basic ones are iron deficiency, vitamin A, iron B deficiency. Those are the ones we typically focus on within the space of public health. And iron deficiency leads to anemia, particularly in children. It leads to increased rate of infection in those children. With vitamin A deficiency, the eyes can be affected. Some of them can actually come down with blindness after exposure to infections such as measles. Then iodine deficiency can be associated with some learning difficulties, decrease intellectual performance, and the rest. Okay.
All right, thank you very much for that. Now, let me ask this: what are the psychological, what are the key psychological changes that occur in the body, as a result of prolonged malnutrition, especially in children?
Just like I've said, so if you have chronic wasting or chronic undernutrition, where they have a stunted individual, so every organ in the body is of smaller size, smaller for the age. So the brain is of a smaller size. So a smaller size brain can't perform at the same level with a fully grown, well-sized brain. So you have a situation where, because of the stunting state of that baby, it cannot perform intellectually with its peers. And many of them, they are stuck in poverty because they can't meet up with a peer, with their peer group, because intellectually they've been set back and they cannot benefit maximally from opportunities that life presents. So it can have very long-lasting impact on the quality of life of that child, if not well attended to.
All right, thank you very much. Now, looking at the difference between malnutrition and weakened immune system, why is it that individuals that are malnourished are more prone to infections and diseases?
Yeah, the basic building block of the agents you need to fight infections in the body are from the food we eat, protein in particular. So when you talk of white blood cells, you talk of your basic antibodies, they are all proteins. So if you are not having adequate intake of these key components of a balanced diet, then you know your ability to produce those fighting mechanisms against infections is also reduced, and the exposure increases when it comes to infection.
All right, now, so my question is, can malnutrition, can it lead to death, and what are the leading causes of death and related to malnutrition?
Malnutrition can lead to death because every part of your body that is making you function and being alive are products produced from the intake of the meals you are getting. So when an individual is starved, and we see this in crisis feeding environments where maybe due to desertification, you see people starve to death. Even their animals, they starve to death because we need regular intake of nutrients to keep our organs functional. So if the deprivation is prolonged, certainly death is guaranteed. If a particular nutrient is also prolonged, that the deprivation of a particular nutrient is prolonged, that it now affects the critical organ of the body that is key for the functionality of the entire body, death is also a guarantee.
Now, apart from starvation, what other causes could lead to malnutrition? I mean, what if the person is eating regularly? So is it the right food, the right amount of food, the classes of food, or the right amount of nutrient? What are the things that need to be considered?
Okay, so it is when we talk of malnutrition or we are not only talking of deprivation. We are also talking about overnutrition, where you also address issues around obesity, severe obesity, and the attendant complications. That is also a form of malnutrition. So, aside from the ones we've spoken about related to deprivation of nutrients and the rest, the impact on the body and the organs of the body, even when individuals are having overnutrition, presenting with overnutrition, such as overweight and diabetes, and overweight and obesity rather. There are also serious consequences of this state. For example, overweight, where we know predisposes individuals to diabetes, to hypertension, to cancer, and cardiac failure. So it's not just deprivation that we are talking of when we talk of malnutrition. We are also talking of overnutrition and attendant complications.
All right, I'd like to ask this. What is the difference between obesity and overfeeding in relation to malnutrition? I mean, these days when you see a child looking, fat, or you think, oh, he or she has been well fed. So what's the difference between obesity and overfeeding in relation to malnutrition?
Okay, so thank you. There are calculations we do for each age to know, is this normal weight? Is this overweight? And is this weight an case of obesity? So those calculations, we may not be able to do that on radio here, but we go by calculation. So for every age, on the spectrum of underweight to obesity or even severe obesity, there are calculations that are related to the weight and the age, the weight and the height, or very young children, the weight and the age. But when you begin to move into adult space, we talk about the weight in relation to the height, because the calculations are very easy to do, and you can then position where that individual is it underweight, is it normal weight, is it overweight, or is he or she obese, and then going to the extreme of being severely obese.
All right. Also, before we go on a break, are there any illnesses, diseases that could actually, lead or cause malnutrition? And what are they? Can you list some of them so that, we can be aware of certain diseases or illnesses that one can watch out for?
Okay, so nutrition or being well taken care of through our food is a process. What I mean is the food has to be prepared, it has to be good balanced diet, the body has to take it in, the body has to be able to process it, and then excrete the unuseful component of it. So anything that prevents ingestion of food, maybe issues around like in cases where we have esophageal, I'm trying not to use too strong medical language, where you have narrowing or complete obstruction of the gut, of the esophagus. That's the gut, that's the pathway through which food gets into our tummy. Anything that blocks that, we deprive the body of meal. Where you have the body not having the enzyme to break down food to useful components, the body ultimately will not get the benefits of the meal. Where you have the food in the system, or you have parasites such as worms that are feeding on the nutrients, the body will be deprived of meal, the benefit of that meal, and so on and so forth, which we cannot really exhaust on the radio program.
All right, thank you for that. Now, let's look at pregnant and nursing mothers. How can they also? What can they look out for, in order to avoid giving birth or nursing, children who are malnourished?
Okay. So that's the one that's called for issue when we deal with malnutrition, particularly among children, because typically we talk about even preparing the girl child before they get married, I mean before they get pregnant, meaning that you avoid underage pregnancy. The woman is well nourished before she even gets to be pregnant. And when they are pregnant, they immediately are antenatal care, where they are tutored on how to take care of themselves and the kind of nutrition that are appropriate for that new state that they have found themselves. Then we talk around, even after they have delivered their baby, breastfeeding the baby, at least for the first 6 months, and then weaning the baby gradually to ensure that the baby can be weaned off the breast milk as at the due time, and then begin to use to feed on the food and the meals occurring in that community. So it's extremely important, because if a pregnant woman or a woman that is about to be pregnant is already undernourished, the pregnancy will put additional weight or additional stress on the body of that woman, and at times you may even have poor outcomes of pregnancies because of the undernourished state of the pregnant woman.
All right. Looking at nursing mothers this time around, you mentioned breastfeeding, exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months. Now, in a case whereby the child does not get access to, enough or exclusive breastfeeding, how can that be corrected?
Those are rare occurrences. So, in medical practice, we say common things occur more commonly. So, if we focus on what occurs majorly, it will be that the woman is there, maybe is there, and are there issues preventing the woman from breastfeeding the baby, or are there issues with the baby that is preventing the baby from benefiting maximally from the breast milk? There are occasions where the mother is not available for breastfeeding the baby, maybe she died during the course of the birth. We typically there are what we call wet nurses, where there are opportunities for breast milk from other humans or other relations. In some cases, but like I said, these are very, very, very rare cases. Or where the mother is so busy, career focused, we talk of even expressing the milk, the breast milk, so that while the breast milk can still be given to the baby.
All right. Now, earlier on, I mentioned in the northern region, especially states like Katsina, Sokoto, Zamfara, these states are currently grappling with severe cases of child malnutrition. How can the federal government, how can the state government, CSOs, Ministry of Health, or what can they do? What can they do to really, arrest the situation?
Yeah, it should be a holistic approach. Government has its responsibility. Those communities also have their responsibility, and then at individual level, there are huge responsibilities. At the government level, we know insecurity is a major reason why agricultural productivity has decreased maximally across those places, where now you are in a situation where they cannot even produce at the farm because the farm are not safe. So that is beyond individual. That's the government, and that's in need of the government intervention to ensure that there is peace and people can produce. At the community level, producing the products that you can use and consume locally is also important. Where people farm cash crop only and they farm and what they produce are just for export, then you may want to review that so that they grow what they can eat. Not that they farm stuff that are non-consumables, and then they have to be looking for where to buy things. With some part of that also taking place, even in the South, even months ago when there was scarcity of tomato. Not that tomato doesn't grow in the South, but because people don't plant it at that level. So there are situations like that also in the North. And the other part of it is education of the populace, so that they even know how to use the produce and get balanced meal from those produce. Many of them people know how to prepare, particularly when it comes to nutrition and children now.
Yes.
Prepare what they have as winning meals, with highly nutritious meals for their families and even for themselves. So these are the approaches that one would advise. There may also be need to look at the very vulnerable and provide them with social security support, maybe resources to be able to afford to buy food, because the socio-economic impact on individuals across the country are extremely severe. Many people, even when they see the food, they cannot afford it. And then for children in school, we talk of school feeding program that can supplement and fill in the gap where they can get access to good nutrition at home for the children in those particular places now.
All right, thank you very much. We're still coming back to this particular area, but let's quickly go on a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue with the program.
Radio 102.1
More like gather for the impact of our October agenda. This October, we want to extend some high-impact magic to you. With massive recharge vouchers giveaway on our social media platforms and opportunities to learn entrepreneurship skills, thereby impacting your lives meaningfully. Citizens, hop on board the October Impact. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and
Every word matters on High Impact 102.1 FM. We're live on YouTube and on X at High Impact 102.1 FM. And you can also watch us live on High Impact TV on Iconsat 42 degree East. To join the conversation, you can call 0700 1021 1021, 0700 1021 1021, or you can send WhatsApp messages to 0907 224 5018, 0907 224 5018. We're still discussing malnutrition crisis. A public health emergency unfolds with Dr. Sonny Olukunle Phillips. He is a public health specialist. Now, before we went on a break, you talked about how we can even introduce school feeding. But looking at the economic challenges that Nigeria is facing, such as rising food prices and inflation, what multi-sectoral approaches are needed to combat malnutrition? And of course, how can the private sector themselves, how can they, give their own input into, facing out malnutrition?
Thank you very much. Yeah. So we talked about government. Private sector has always been part of the food production value chain over the years. They supply most of the inputs for the farms, fertilizer, pesticides, and the rest. So it's one of the grappling challenges that farmers are even facing is the skyrocketing prices of many of these inputs. So in a way, private sectors can also, I don't know how to put this, but can also be lenient with their pricing mechanism so that farmers can afford these inputs and therefore improve on productivity. Within their community of activity too, they can take up some of these responsibilities of supporting school feeding, as the case may be. Those that have large numbers of staff can also provide meals. There are companies that actually provide rich, well-packaged lunches for their staff. That is also adding value to that state. What else? You also then need to build the capacity of the farmers through appropriate extension services to grow food that are resistant to, maybe in the north in particular, resistant to drought, such that even they can produce all through the year. Because many places in the north, the production is actually driven by irrigation, because rain season is quite reduced to a few months all through the year. So these are areas where the government and then even private sector can play their roles.
Now, in your opinion, what role should healthcare professionals play in community-based interventions, aimed at preventing malnutrition, especially in underserved areas?
Thank you. They've actually been doing their own notes. If you go into any primary healthcare facility, you will see corners, nutrition corners, where they teach the mothers how to use locally produced food items to improve on the nutrition of their children. So they've been doing a whole lot. I know that for sure, because there are several projects that are targeting that. The other area I've not also mentioned is the legislative. Recently, the National House of Representatives actually launched a legislative coalition on nutrition, which is to also look at how, from policy point of view, the necessary policy and legislative input can be initiated to drive improved production and guarantee that the citizens have access to adequate nutrition and ensure food security. So these are all already in place. The degree of implementation so that we have the result is where most times we lack the required inputs. But there are many efforts currently in place that ideally should improve the scenario. Over.
Okay, now what about awareness and sensitization, especially in these rural areas? How can the government, how can the state?
They're already doing that. They're already doing it. I know for sure, because I've been on the field with some of them. They do that a lot. Most of those women come to the facilities. They do it through women group. There are outreaches to markets. I know there are outreaches even to community leaders on how men can even support their women to source meals, to source items from locally produced farm products and produce high quality meals from such. So they are all going on. Where we need additional inputs are actually government efforts to lessen the burden of procuring many of the inputs. So if we have subsidized farm inputs, fertilizers, pesticide, and the rest, production will improve. If we have the farms that are safe for farmers to produce, production will improve. And then you continue with public health education that they should plant items that they can plant and crops that they can utilize locally for their own consumption, and also enhance through education the women's capability to utilize and use these local plants and crops to produce balanced meat, both for themselves and their kids.
All right, thank you very much. Now, I was going to ask, do we have some sort of vaccine? And what about also talking about policies this time around? Talking about policies also, do you think that the House of Assembly, the Senate, could have some sort of policies that could give free medical access to nursing mothers, pregnant women rather, so that they can get free access to medical health care, once they encounter this malnutrition?
Those are already, like I said earlier, those are already. There is, aside from the recently launched legislative coalition on nutrition, I hope I got that right, but I know some in the House of Reps, the Deputy Speaker actually there at the launching. I was also there at the launching at the National Assembly a few months ago.
Has it been implemented?
It's already been implemented
across states.
What it tries to do across all the states, yeah, and all the chairmen of health from the state assemblies were actually at National Assembly for the launching. So it's already been implemented. When it comes to providing women who are pregnant free access, at most primary health care facilities that exist actually through what is called Basic Health Provision Fund, BHCPF. The challenge is many people in the community don't know. So that is where a whole lot of public health education needs to be put in place, because even things that are provided and covered within the health facilities that they can access next to free, almost free, many don't know. I've been to facilities where you see a long list of the names of beneficiaries of Basic Health Care Provision Fund, and they never come. So that's one area where we need to do more with publicizing some of these initiatives that are out there that people can benefit from for their own unaware.
All right. Okay. Before we go, how does Nigeria's high burden of malnutrition, how does it exacerbate the healthcare system's challenging, in managing non-communicable diseases like diabetes, cardiovascular diseases?
It has serious implications. So we talk of transitional state. Before, most of our diseases were infectious diseases because of poor environment and the rest. But now, particularly in the better developed part of the country, southern part of the country, where we are now having increased cases of overnutrition, because we are now taking up Western lifestyle. Then now we're having a situation where we are seeing lifestyle and diseases related to this new lifestyle, where we are consuming foods that are highly processed. We are consuming less and less of vegetables and fibers, and people are coming down with all sorts of related diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, heart failure, and rest, like I've said earlier. So it has serious load. It places serious load on the health system, because most of these diseases are chronic diseases. And now that the cost of medications has even gone extremely high beyond what the average citizen can afford, you can imagine the situation many have found themselves, who are living with diabetes, living with hypertension, and they need to take care of themselves on a long-term basis. And these are diseases that are not covered most times by health insurance. So the burden of health system is massive, courtesy of the poor nutrition and the attendant complications that people are now having to grapple with.
All right, I think this is a safe place to land. Thank you very much. You have been very brilliant discussing malnutrition crisis with us, and we do appreciate your inputs.
Pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Right, we have been discussing malnutrition crisis, a public health emergency unfolds with Dr. Sonny Olukunle Phillips, a public health specialist, and it has been an impactful conversation, I must say. This is where we round off the program on record, where every word matters. Many thanks to my producers, but the bigger thanks is to you watching and listening across the globe. And if you've enjoyed the program, why not join us same time, same station? Keep listening to High Impact 102.1 FM and stay glued to High Impact TV on Niconsat 42 degree east. I am Olumide Shukoya. Good morning.
High Impact Radio 102.1 FM. The future is now.
Welcome to the high side of life. Join us every day at High Impact 102.1 FM, your urban lifestyle station.
I just want to be